Bonsoir les amis, this is Llyane Stanfield, and as always you can find me at parisianfrench.com. Some of you already have the crash course, and those of you who have the crash course may not need as much explanation tonight as the others do. But in any case, Les, thank you so much for bringing this up for everybody. I want to talk about the chart as well as all the past tenses. I have read the description or the explanation that you tried, and kudos on that, bravo. And I would like, I felt compelled to jump in because there are a few confusions, which is normal. But the fact that the explanation is not structured enough, it's scary for people who don't really know, and I don't want that to happen to anyone in this group, not under my watch. So tonight is Q&A Français Sunday, and I'm going to talk about the schedule, I guess. So it's an image, I'm just going to look right now, look it up, that we have been looking at, which talks about the tenses, the regular and the irregular verbs. And you also have it, I suggest that you save it to look at it while you watch this, or actually a better way to do is to open the post with the picture in a different browser, so that you can both watch the video and listen to me watch the video, as well as look at the picture, at the schedule. It's like a table, right? It's a table with all the endings and everything else. So this is a really good cheat sheet for beginners. What I did notice though is that not only beginners have had this problem here. So I notice, and that is exactly what happens when you're learning from different sources. When you're changing, teachers and such, when you work with teachers or tutors, because they will explain, and then you'll just have to memorize. That's pretty much what it is, right? The way I work is, and everybody else who's in the group here who works with me knows, you get to speak and you get to apply everything, and that is the difference between knowing in 2 weeks like a lot to do on your own, and not remembering much after 5 years or 10. So I'm going to talk, let's look at this table, and I'm going to explain to everybody, even if you know, so this is for all levels, so even if you don't know anything about verbs, and some people, they were commenting and they would say, well, I'm just not there yet, and that's perfectly fine. But this is the reason why what I'm going to talk to you right now is just to give you a clear image about what you should do in the future. So having listened, watching this Facebook Live will give you enough clarity to know where to go from here and what to practice more of. And even if you don't know anything, or even if you do know like everything on this table, this is the reason I want to say to you that what you're going to learn from this live video is important to then back it up with practice. And this is why I have a special offer for you, 10 Skype classes with me to master all tenses and all verbs, regular, irregular, whatever, so if you have any problem with verbs, do take these 10 classes, because I I'm going to put the link under this video. If you don't do it, and this is today only, if you don't do it today, the Skype classes, separate Skype classes, I typically give only to the existing students. So if you are not an existing student, I suggest that if you want to master verbs, you get those 10 classes. So on the left side, what we have are the regular verbs. So we have 3 groups in French. We have the first group that ends in ER, and the first group that ends in ER, and the endings for the present tense is EES, EONS, EZ, ENT. So this is not clear at all, so it needs a lot of explanation. So it's only the present tense, what you see on the left hand side, those are the endings only for the present tense in each group. So the first group that end in ER, have those endings. What mean endings? What do they mean? Because I have noticed people don't understand what endings are or what a root is, root. So the verb ending in ER have the ending ER, meaning, for instance, parler, which is one of the verbs that is given as example, is one of the first verbs in the first group, ends in ER, so if I take away the ER, I end up with the root of the verb. The root of the verb in the case of parler is PARL, to which I'm adding the endings for present, for instance, ES, EONS, EZ, ENT. So this is what this left hand side of the table is. Going down on IR, this is the second group of regular verbs. So know that left hand side is only regular verbs, and this is the second group in IR. And again, IR from the infinitive, which is finir, which is the second column, is the infinitive. Infinitive is the form that we find that verb into the dictionary. It means to finish, finir, to finish, right? And so when I take away the IR, I end up with the root of the verb, which is FIN, and the endings for present tense are IS, IS, IT, ISS, ONS, ISS, EZ, ISS, ENT. That's the present tense only. Now, the third group ends in RE, and so the infinitive ends in RE. These are again verbs that are regular, and the first example is attendre. So RE is taken away for the ending, and the root is AATTEND, to which we add the endings for the present tense, which we see on the left side. I don't see any questions yet. So it's SS nothing, ONS EZ ENT. Nothing means that the third person singular ends in D, so attend with a D. So this is what the left-hand side of this table is. So please give me a sign, a question, or something to let me know that everything's clear. Now we have to the right-hand side the irregular verbs. So now these irregular verbs are some of the, starting with être, avoir, then aller, faire, mettre, boire. Those are irregular verbs. In the first, they're not in the first group, so this is very confusing. In fact, all irregular verbs are in the third group. Okay, so just know that the table is not necessarily created. Thank you for the likes. I'm happy you're here to watch this. So this table has the irregular verbs to the right hand side, but as you can see, IR, ER, so ER, IR, RE, it's no longer honored in the right hand side in the irregular verbs area, and those, it's not clear what do they belong to. So everything that is irregular, so an entire part of the irregular side of that table. All irregular verbs in the French language are in the third group. So the third group contains the regular verbs in RE and the irregular verbs. The reason that is because the verbs in RE are very few, much fewer anyway than the first group is the biggest. So first group regular is the biggest. Okay, so this is what these are. Now all these verbs, the reason I commented and I told you that this is important that you follow my Tuesday posts where I'm asking you to make sentences with that particular verb at that particular tense. This is the order in which I am introducing the verbs in my intensive program. So I want you to practice directly. That's how you learn these things. Making sentences that belong, to your life, that reflect your life, and that's exactly how we learn to speak. So you're already doing this, only you're not speaking. So again, the next step from this video right here and the explanation I'm going to give you is to get 10 Skype classes with me to actually master the verb tenses, verbs, regular, irregular, everything verbs in French. And that's quite a big thing because, most of you have been struggled with verbs for many years now. And so I know that would be amazing for you to reach that goal, to never having to worry or stopping and not knowing how to use a verb in French. So all the verbs that are here, we're going to actually do them in it's going to take a long time, of course. This is a free space, and that's I'm giving you homework and I'm giving you guidance and correcting you, but this is not getting you to speak anytime soon if you do only the Facebook group, that's for sure. So now under each in the category of the irregular verbs, you see était, eu, allait, fait. Okay, got it. I'm gonna see it now. Okay, so they give you that bit that Les was saying, the avoir bit, and then the other bit. So while I know that many people are very uncomfortable with grammar, which I'm not sure because a lot of you are professionals, and many people, me included, love math. So although I'm a French coach, I'm also acting and I'm doing a lot of artsy stuff. I think my brain is kind of 50-50 balanced out because I love math and physics. I adore them. So I know grammar is the math of the language. Okay, so I'm going to compare that with the musical theory. So and of course, Beatles didn't actually read music. I know, and they've been, and they're the Beatles. But most musicians really learned or get to play really well music by really knowing the notes and knowing the musical theory. Well, notes and musical theory, notes I would say are kind of pronunciation. Musical theory is the grammar, the equivalent of the grammar in French. So I know a lot of people once like, can I just skip this? If you work with me, you're gonna love it because I love it, and I'm doing so informally that it's like a story and included in everything that I do. Plus, if you don't like grammar, I'm not gonna use grammatical lingo. If you do like grammar, I can go as deep as you want in the analysis of it. But now talking here to a group is a little harder to please everybody. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go halfway. So I'm going to give you the names of these bits. So Les was saying the avoir bit and the other bit. So the other bit is the past participle. So what you see in the little square under avoir, for instance, eu, that is the past participle, and I'm going to talk about the past tenses as promised. But that's how it's called. So write it down, past participle. Now, those past participles are not only used in passé composé, and I know Les was also talking about imparfait. Imparfait does not use the past participle, but there are other composed tenses. So that's what I want to introduce to you, the idea of composed tenses. That's the reason why passé composé is called passé composé, because it's a composed past. Passé simple, if you heard of it, which many of you did, but I'm talking such that everybody will understand. So passé simple is a tense that is used, it's a past tense too, but it's used in writing. But it's simple, it's not composed, it doesn't have the two bits, right? So now we established the fact that this eu, allait, fait, and so on, the little box under each verb, irregular verb conjugated, it's called past participle, participe passé, past participle. So I'm going to talk about the composed tenses. I'm going to start with passé composé. So I think I've kind of covered everything. Just know that every single Tuesday we will go through all of these tenses. If you just want to dabble at it, wait for the next Tuesday for the next verb. If you really want to get it done and check it off your bucket list, verbs, get those 10 Skype classes, because I'm only giving them today for this. So I'm going to now talk about passé composé. Okay, let me see one second, because I'm having here. So you need to understand passé composé tense works. Briefly to say, I saw or I have seen is the same thing in French. Yes, I saw and I have seen is the same thing in French, because in fact in French passé composé is I have seen. So if I want to if I would have to translate, I have seen is j'ai vu. I have seen. J'ai, I have, and vu, seen. I saw, that does not exist in French, okay? So just know that. But it's translatable. So in English we have to, that in French didn't develop the second one. Another tense that does not exist in French is the present continuous, as in like I am going. That does not exist in French. So in order for me to say I am going, I'm actually saying I go. So again, something it does not have an equivalent in French. I saw, in fact, is I have seen and I saw. Yeah, they're in English. They're there are two different things that can be conjugated separately. But in French, the format is I have seen, and it's translated as well as with I saw. Actually, to be very honest, but again, English is my second language, but I really don't know what is the difference, if any, in language, in conversation, between I saw and I have seen, okay? So he says you conjugate avoir, the have bit, which, okay, and add a past participle. Oh, see, he said that, vu. So the past participle, vu, is already, he explained that, because I saw that most people read his explanation. I really want to get to his, to develop on top of his and really make it clear. Because some things are not clear for some people, and I don't want anything to turn off anybody from anything French. It can be very easy and fun, and just that's what I'm doing today. So the avoir bit is called the auxiliary. Why auxiliary? Because it's auxiliary to the verb, right? It's not the actual verb, but it's an auxiliary to the actual verb, the verb that I'm conjugating. So in our example, I have seen, j'ai vu. Vu, voir is to see, is the verb that I'm conjugating, but I'm using an auxiliary verb, which is avoir. That is the passé composé. Now, he says it's not always as simple as this. There are about 16 verbs plus all reflexive verbs that conjugate être and not avoir to make the past tense. Okay, so these 16 verbs are, that I want to talk about now, are verbs that are conjugated with être. So all the verbs except for these 16 verbs, I have to talk about the voice, okay, because he's also getting into the passive mode. So I'm going to have to talk about modes. So we have the active voice. I'm going to give you an example. I wash my dog. I am the subject, so I'm doing the washing, and I'm washing who? The dog. So the subject, which is me, is actively doing the action of the washing. I am doing the washing. The dog just sits there and gets washed. Now, the reflexive, which he less refers to, is I wash myself, meaning the subject is active, yes, but is also, the action is reflected right back onto the subject. So imagine, like, I'm throwing the water in the mirror, it reflects right back onto me, I'm the one getting wet, whereas in the other one, in the active mode, the dog is the one that's getting wet and washed. So reflexive is I'm doing the washing and I am getting washed. I have to talk about the passive mode, and I did talk about this before. Missy, remember that. We did have a video that we commented a lot on the passive mode. So in this context, the passive mode would be the dog is washed by me. The dog is washed by me. Who's doing the washing? I'm still doing the washing. But who's the subject? The dog, because the dog is washed. So the question is not anymore who is washing, who washes, but who is washed. So it's the passive mode. Why is it called passive? Because the dog just sits and gets wet and clean, and me as the object is a certain type of object, I am doing the washing, but the subject is sitting there lazy, getting washed. And that's the passive mode. So to go back to, it's not only, okay, there is about 16 verbs plus all reflexive verbs. So I'm going to add here plus the passive mode. So reflexive and passive that conjugate with être and not with avoir. So, je lave mon chien. I wash my dog. Je me suis lavé. Let me see. Let's do passé composé, right? So, j'ai lavé mon chien is with avoir. See, laver with avoir because it's an active. So remember this, it's active mode. A verb can have different forms. It can be active, it can be reflexive mode, it can be passive mode. So laver, to wash in this case, has the three of them. Not all verbs do, but laver does. And so, j'ai lavé mon chien, I washed my dog. J'ai is the auxiliary avoir, laver is the past participle, and so this is the active mode with avoir. Je me suis lavé, I washed myself, is the reflexive mode, and it conjugates with être. And le chien est lavé par moi, the dog is washed by me, is passive. The dog is standing there, not washing himself. I'm washing him, so it's the passive mode, and it's conjugated with être. So I hope that this clarifies that second paragraph where he says there's about 16, and I'm going to talk about the 16 verbs. 16 verbs plus all reflexive verbs plus all the passive. So 16 verbs that conjugate in the active mode with être, plus every verb that can be conjugated in the reflexive mode, or all the verb that can be conjugated in the passive mode, okay? There's no such a thing as reflexive verbs. They are verbs. Some can have the passive, some can have the reflexive, some can't, okay? For instance, aller doesn't have reflexive. I can't say je me suis allé. It just doesn't work in French this way. Okay, now I'm going to address the 16 verbs that conjugate with être in the active mode. Now that we know why these 16 verbs, right? So we do have the 16 verbs that we should know that they in the active mode they conjugate with être. All the rest in the active mode conjugate with avoir. So now, the method that everybody learns in school, I shouldn't say everybody, maybe about 95% of schools teach this method with Dr. Mrs. Vanderbrand. And that is fun. It's fun for grade 2 maybe. But from grade 3 and up, it's no fun anymore because it's not helpful. The reason it's not helpful is because we have Dr. Mrs. Vanderbrand, and then we have the letters. It's a mnemotechnique. But what am I learning with this mnemotechnique? I'm really only learning that there are 16 verbs, and I'm really only learning that there are so many with R, so many with D, so many, but I really am not learning the verbs themselves. There's nothing in this mnemotechnique that tells me which are the verbs. Okay, so, and also, if I remember Dr. Miss, if I even remember, because even Les didn't remember, and Les, don't feel bad, because most people don't even remember it, because it's just not helpful. But even if, let's say, we remember Dr. Mrs. Vanderbrand, there's no practical way to use it, because in order to use it, let's say in writing, in order to use that, you put Dr. Mrs. Vanderbrand, and then under the verbs, the letters, you're putting the verbs. Hopefully you get the right verbs to put that start with those letters, but the right verbs, right? It can be other verbs. You can easily put other verbs there. And then once you have them all lined up, then you see if in your story that you're writing there's any of those verbs, and if there is, then you conjugate it with être. Huge! Okay, so I've done this in writing. What about in conversation? Can I ever use that? Not a way. There's like no way we can use that. And that so frustrates me. That's so mad at this, because this method is just no-no. Why is it even introduced? Because I was like, doesn't help. Not only it doesn't help, but it frustrates most people. A lot of people, because of these little things, are just dropping grammar altogether, verbs and French. And so, I'm here to tell you, don't use that method ever. What I do want you to use is the opposites. Now, there is some sort of memorization that comes with it, of course. There is. It has to be, right? But the more logical and like cheat sheet format that you have it, I'm going to write these things into the description later after I'm done with this video. So the more logical you make it for yourself, the better. First of all, to remember them or to have an idea, and then to remember them, but to make them somehow that it looks like a cheat sheet in a way that actually really helps. So I'm sure most of you know, if you're very at the beginning, don't worry about it. You know now, okay? So I'm telling you now, those verbs typically show movement or becoming. Movement or becoming. But these are not all the movement or becoming verbs in French. Just like, I don't know if you know pronunciation and all the rules of pronunciation. For instance, we have H in French that behaves like a vowel, and a number of words that behave like a consonant. H behaves like a consonant. And so the only thing that I can do is just to memorize those things, those ones that conjugate, that behave like a consonant, which means, I'm not going to get into that because I'm confusing you, but anyway, so it's a memorization thing, right? So with just an exception. So these 16 verbs are a reminder of the language evolution and whatnot, and we just have to memorize them. But how do we memorize them? So first of all, we know that they must express some movement or becoming. And then secondly, with opposites. So this is the way to memorize these verbs. Aller with venir. Arriver with partir. Descendre with monter. Entrer with sortir. Mourir with naître. Rester with tomber. And then I have verbs, 4 verbs that do not have opposites. two of them, devenir and retourner, and then two more, revenir, which actually conjugates like venir, so it's a little redundant to put it on the list anyway, but know it, okay? And rentrer, that conjugates exactly like entrer, again redundant, but remember it regardless. Those are the 16 verbs. So I'm going to repeat them, the opposition, the ones with the opposites first, and then the rest. Aller with venir, arriver with partir, descendre, monter, entrer, sortir, mourir, naître, rester, tomber, then without opposites, devenir, and then retourner, and then the ones that are a variation of the two that I just said, revenir and rentrer. Those are your verbs, and put them on the cheat sheet, like literally, this kind of cheat sheet, like this, on this thing. So write them and stick it on the computer and refer to it. Do not start memorizing because it doesn't help in conversation. It only frustrates you because you feel always you're gonna keep feeling that you should know better by now. But you can't know better by now if you don't practice the right way. So if you practice memorization, it's not going to come out in conversation. You have to practice conversation to come out in conversation. You see? So what I'm asking you to do every day to write these sentences and to rewrite, please, oh please do, because otherwise really you're not taking advantage of everything that you have here for free. Rewrite after I give you the corrections. Do rewrite your sentence including corrections, because your brain is going to memorize. We have visual memory. That's the brain works with visual memory first, and that is how you memorize, and then use it. I mean, really speak it out. You can't if you don't have someone who can guide you. So again, I'm going to remind you, I do offer you 10 Skype classes to master verbs forever. So whatever it is that you have to unlearn or you've never learned, to get all the verbs, all the conjugations, all the tenses, I'm going to teach you in 10 hours, and you'll have them done, checked off. So of course, to these 16 verbs that are in active mode, remember what I said. If you don't remember, rewind this video and rewatch. So active mode, these 16 verbs conjugate with être, as well as the verbs that have a reflexive mode and the verbs that have a passive mode. So this is what I wanted to say to address the 16 verbs that have been brought up here. Naître and mourir. I remember Les was saying to address naître and mourir. So I just already included into the être, into the conjugation with être in the past tense. Oh, right. Well, so I want to talk about more compound tenses, but bear with me. Naître and mourir. Je suis né, je suis mort. Not exactly sure what. There's no problem with naître, but with mourir there is a little problem. It's only context will tell you if je suis mort or il est mort is he died or he is dead. Okay? So only the context, I know this is a common question, only the context will tell you if il est mort means he died or he is dead. Because in French, if I say il est beau, he is beautiful. You see, with être, I introduce adjectives too. With the verbs that conjugate with être, that can be, depending on the context, either the action in the past or an actual adjective. So with mourir, that is the very common confusion that can come up. There's another past tense entirely called the imperfect tense, which roughly translates things like I was seeing, which is a bit different to I have seen or I saw. Yes, imparfait is the verb, it's the tense that translates exactly the English I was seeing or I used to see. Those two situations. So whenever in English you would say I was seeing or I used to see, that's your imperfect, because it's an action that is a past action that ended, is not continuous in the present, and so it's a past continuous, shows a background situation, a repetitive situation. But these are the two. I don't want to get into the imparfait right now. I am not getting into any, very detailed rules for each tense. Thank you for the questions. I'm gonna turn on here on the computer and I'll answer. So I'm not gonna get into much detail. Get the 10 classes if you want to really know these tenses, all of them. But the rule of thumb again, cheat sheet, I love these, okay? Because the most important thing about the cheat sheet is that whenever you need it, you go look and use it. You go look and again use it. That's how brain works in a practical way. That's how you remember instead of just learn and keep learning. Okay. So that is imparfait. Finally, to make you all but want to give up, but please don't. There's times where you can conjugate avoir verbs with être. This would be something like I am seen, which translates as je suis vu, and changes the past participle to match the gender and the number. Okay, so what Les talks about here is the passive mode. We already talked about it. So this is exactly what I wanted to talk about here, to structure everything. And again, if you want this structure in your brain, what I talked about in this video to be in your brain and never go away, take the Skype classes, because it's so frustrating. And I know I just finished a class with someone saying to me, it's so frustrating when I feel like I should know this by now because they have been taught to me. But if it's not you doing it, you're not going to remember it. If you're just watching me and listening to me or anybody else, it's just going, and it's, next time you're going to hear as if it was something new, and if not, it gets frustrating. So what he says here, I am seen, this is the passive mode. Who's the subject? I am the subject. But who sees me? Someone else. The subject doesn't do the seeing. The subject stays cool and is seen by someone else, right? So the past participle less is change. It's the l'accord avec le sujet is the agreement. So that's called the agreement of the subject, meaning the verb and subject agree that, oh yeah, is it feminine? Oh, is it plural? Yeah, that's cool. Let's be the same, like both of us together. Let's get together, be the same way. Let's show together that the subject is a female, or more females or more males, or something like that. Now, this also happens to the reflexive as well as to the 16 verbs they conjugate. Every verb that conjugates with être asks for this agreement that Les talks about here, matches the gender and the number. Right, well, so he says he's gone too deep into this. No, he actually didn't. It was just not maybe structured to, for everybody. And I really wanted to make sure that nobody is really getting confused or upset. So what I want to add to this is plus que parfait. So there are composed tenses. I don't want you to think that passé composé, because I said, oh, past tense, passé composé, we all talked about passé composé, but it's not only the passé composé which is using that past participle, vu, du, and pu, and all those était, and what you have in that table. Plus que parfait is also a composed tense, and there are more, but that's all I want to talk about, because we're talking only about the past tenses today. So plus que parfait is the English I had done this. I had eaten when you called, right? So I ate and then you called. Plus que parfait is the past of the past action, right? So I'm not going to get into the description of it, but plus que parfait is also a composed tense that also uses the same past participle, also being conjugated with avoir or être in the same situation. So we have in the active mode, we have 16 verbs conjugated with être. In the reflexive mode, whatever verbs in the French language have the reflexive mode, and in the passive mode, I am, seen, and all those, whatever verbs in the French language have conjugate in the passive mode. So that's what I wanted to cover today. I'm going to turn on my, let me see if I can actually see. If I don't see your questions, I see some questions there, but if I don't, I'm afraid that if I turn this on, I may lose connection on my on the phone. So I would like to, let's see here, and if I can see your questions, guys. I'm on the computer. Okay, there it is. Yeah, let me refresh this. Okay, so I want to see your questions to see if I can actually answer your questions live. If I'm not able to, depending on the connection, I will answer the question in the text. But do make sure that if you want to, oh geez, okay, if you really want to actually own the knowledge of this video, all the verbs and all the tenses, please do get those 5 Skype class, 10 Skype classes. Yeah, I don't, oh gosh, okay, let me just try to do something here. I'm looking for, yeah, I can't, no. Oh. Yeah, it doesn't let me, okay, let me see. I'm trying to see your questions. Okay, let me just, I think I may have. Facebook Live is not brilliant with the, hey Les, oh, I see. I think I'm getting the comments here. Okay, cool. What is tout? Tut? Les, I don't know what this tut is about. Naître and mourir weren't in the table, and the present indicative conjugation is weird, which is why I mentioned them. Present, je nais, tu nais, je meurs, tu meurs. Well, yeah, they're irregular. Yeah, absolutely. And so, wait a second, you commented, oh, tutorial, got it. And I actually lost one of the comments, the first comment I wanted to answer. Tutorial on past tense. I don't think, wait a second. Okay, I'm a little confused, but we'll clarify this. I'm thinking that, I don't know why I lost one of the comments. That's what's weird about the Facebook Live, that it's not actually given all the comments. So if you mean the table, that's not a tutorial in the past tense. You have the present tense everywhere, and you have the endings for the present tense indicative, right? And so no, not so much. It's that is why even you know, I mean, that's the thing. All the groups out there I see, they are actually flooding with, you know, oh, get this on how to do this verb and how to do that verb and how to, you know, tons and tons of resources and more resources and tons of resources. Well, if I want resources, I'm gonna go on the internet and I find tons of resources without being in the group. Problem with this table wasn't even very clear. It was actually a tutorial in the present tense rather than past tense, because it only gives you the past participle, but everything is on the present tense, really. So, but I did want to address the past because you have talked about all these things. So yeah, that's what I had for everybody. Do get this 10 Skype classes to really master the French tenses, the French verb tenses, and how to use them. Not just understanding them, but understanding them as well. These resources, try to take it with a grain of salt, because they tend to be pretty, but I'd much rather you create your own table based on what you already understood, just to make it clear for your brain to recap, rather than getting someone else's, which, by the way, well, yeah, okay, so this was for the present tenses, regulars and irregulars, some examples at school. But for the past, didn't really give much. It is a good resource in the sense that you can just have it on the wall and go to it as needed. But I feel that the present should have been, you know what, if it works for you, that's fine. But I hope that the confusions were cleaned up a little bit. Thank you so much, Les, for bringing this up for everybody. And thank you everybody who is watching right now and who will watch the replay. The replay of this video is going to stay here for a very limited time. And to go to the next level, this is just, you're gonna forget this tomorrow if you don't do the next step. Get 10 Skype classes with me, and I'm not offering Skype classes separately from my programs, except for my existing clients. So get 10 Skype classes to master the verbs and to know exactly when to use them and what to use, so that you get to make conversation quicker and get less frustrated. Thank you so much. Stay on your game and don't ever give up on your dream to become bilingual. Learn to speak Parisian French and break the language barrier. Merci beaucoup et à la prochaine. Au revoir.